Welcome back, everyone, to R2Kast number 90. Now, for 89 episodes, I have done this with two hands. Today, that's not going to be happening. I am in a bit of a cast, and probably will be for the next few episodes that are released because of this. I have very much few other responsibilities on hand, so I'm going to film quite a lot of podcasts and try and get ahead of things at lambing time. Not that I'm going to be that useful at lambing time. But yep, this is episode 90. Last week we had Ollie Harrison, Ollie Blogs Contracted, talking about his rapid rise into YouTube. Basically, had never done anything in YouTube until a couple of years ago, and now is one of the sort of main names in that scene in the country. He talked some really interesting things about analytics. He's done some mental things for charity, and also a really interesting chat about Pripyat, the sort of village, I guess, where the people of Chernobyl lived. And yeah, he did travel there and maybe said some things he shouldn't have said, but that was quite interesting as well. Next week, we will have Louise Penn, an agronomist from England as well. There's 3 in a row from England. So yeah, that'll be another episode, much like today's, where I'm going to try and pretend I know what I'm talking about, but deep down, I really don't. Today's guest is Millie Fyfe. We have had various people on the podcast over the years now where they just seem to fit so much in. Now, I write a few sort of headings down for every person I bring on just to keep the conversation going. Normally it's 2 or 3 things. I think I've got 9 things written down already. So this is going to be one of those episodes that isn't going to be difficult to keep going. But Millie, would you like to say hello?
Hello, thank you so much for having me on, Wallace. It's funny because I followed you from afar for a little while, and I think we have got an awful lot in common, a lot of the same interests as well. So yeah, no, thank you for having me.
Just before we get started with another episode of the R2Kast, I would like to thank our primary sponsors, A-Plan Rural. A-Plan Rural are heavily involved on the social media scene in the ag space with 120,000 followers on Instagram. They use this following to host social media takeovers with farmers throughout the country to showcase their stories. They also post to their rural community blog with further stories about these people in the industry. On top of this, they like to support initiatives that are championing the British agricultural industry, such as myself. So thank you to A-Plan Rural for that.
Well, definitely, yeah. And I mean, we actually have a bit of a group chat now with all the sort of podcasters we're aware of in food and farming in the UK. And if you're listening to this and you're one of them and you're not in that WhatsApp group, I do apologise. Just give us a message and we'll add you in. We've got everyone that I'm aware of, and Millie is our newest recruit. It's not been going long for ages, but it's quite a cool little chat trying to sort of share ideas and whatnot. Ideas I very much require. Millie, I always like to get a bit of background on people. Like, what was your background? What did you want to do when you were younger? All that sort of thing.
Yeah, so I'm not from a farming background originally, although I grew up in the countryside. So I grew up in the Cotswolds, and interestingly, we used to come to the west coast of Scotland on holiday most years. So I probably passed your front door once or twice, but probably as a young wee nipper. But I got involved with the Young Farmers organisation at a very, very young age. I didn't really enjoy secondary school. I think I was probably quite a country bumpkin and went to a town school and didn't really get it. Well, I was very, very academic, but I got bullied quite a bit. And it wasn't until I went to the Young Farmers that I kind of found my tribe. And from there, I kind of really threw myself into doing public speaking, stock judging, organising events, just really getting to the heart of what Young Farmers is all about. And I kind of built up not only my YFC career. So I went through the Young Farmers, through county, area, and then I became national chairman for England and Wales in 2012, end of 2012, 2013. Meanwhile, I've worked for various farming charities. So the Royal Agricultural Benevolent Institution was one of them. And then after I got married, I met my husband through Young Farmers and got married, and then took on a role as chief executive of the Beef and Dairy Shorthorn Society. So did that for a little while. Well, fell pregnant, and have now sort of put quite strong roots at home. So we're farming, my husband and I, in Northamptonshire. So we're beef, sheep, arable farmers, and then I have a few of my own pigs. After I finished with the Young Farmers, I applied to the Henry Plum Foundation and got a grant to look at adding value to rare breed pig meat. because really I wanted to have my own project on the farm. Obviously, I've married into farming, and Andrew day to day looks after the beef cattle, the sheep, and the arable side of things. And so for me, just having a few pigs and actually sort of really getting my hands dirty, but then also communicating from field to fork, literally, and then being able to sell meat boxes was what I started doing. But then after having the children, it got a little bit much, but I still do a little bit selling pigs for the freezer or sausages as well. But it's always nice to have a freezer full of meat. So for me, that's sort of bit of my backstory. And then after having the kids, because I've always been in kind of marketing communication type roles, I've always kept a good network of people around me, memberships, things like that. And so I started to do a few bits of projects for different people that I knew in terms of either managing their social media or helping them with their own PR. So I built up PR and marketing business around the children. And then I suppose during the pandemic, obviously we couldn't really do an awful lot, although like life went on for most rural folk. But I would get the kids involved on the farm, in the garden, growing things. And I take a lot of photos, do a lot of little videos, post them on social media. And they started to get quite a bit of traction. So for me, I launched a food blog called No Fuss Meals for Busy Parents off the back of that, because obviously it was just on Facebook I was posting originally, and obviously only your friends see that. And so I wanted to then do something a little bit more so that more people could see what we were growing, and then we were picking what we were growing, bringing it into the kitchen, and then creating a meal from scratch, which is something that I've always done. And again, harks back to my YFC roots. I used to do a lot of cookery competitions, stuff like that. And so I just kind of just started just sharing recipes and getting the kids baking and stuff. And then people were messaging me and going, oh my goodness, you've inspired me to get my kids baking. I would have never done that before. Or messages like, I had no idea this grew in this country, wow. And so from there, it kind of snowballed, and it's been quite successful. And I'm just really building upon that now, actually. So not only do I post recipes, but I also interview farmers about what they grow, what they produce, and then sort of try and tie that in with a nice recipe using the said ingredients and share all of their links. And then I also do sort of bits about seasonal ingredients as well, because, food scarcity, food security is a huge thing now, and trying to encourage more people to eat in season. So so that's just a little overview or a sprinkle, I suppose, of some of the things I'm involved with.
Well, I mean, I said I'd written a few things down. I think you've just ticked off every single one of them. Sometimes these podcasts, as I'm sure you'll know, Billy, you're sort of speaking to someone, they've got a great story, but getting out of them is like, come on, go. I don't think that's going to be a struggle today. I think we're going to be quite fine with that. We'll try and go in sort of what you mentioned order. Let's see if we can do that. Yeah. First off, where in southwest Scotland was it you holidayed?
So we came to Arran. We I remember we got it's Broddick, isn't it? Is it Broddick? Yeah. Oh God, and I'm trying to think. Black Waterfoot is where we stayed.
Kinloch by any chance?
Yeah. Well, it's not a big. So I remember going round, and so came to Arran, to Isla, and to Mull as well. So, and then we've done a few of the islands.
So you've, if you've done Mull and Isla, that's two I haven't done. So in fairness, I've only actually been to Arran. I'm from there. I don't even know if that counts. And I've been to one more. That's terrible. Bute, been to Bute as well.
Yeah.
But no, Kinloch, Blackwaterfoot was basically where I spent my whole childhood. Bikes and football and water balloon fights was pretty much all I did down there. That was my childhood. That was. Young Farmers is one I always like to talk about, and I'll give you a bit of a reason why. Back in 2015, I started Arran Young Farmers. It had been defunct since the 1993 Arran Agricultural Junior Society had stopped. And I was like, right, there's quite a few of us at uni and Ayr, let's give it a shot. Started it up, and for 18 months it kind of went okay, and it was good. We get a few things, stock judgings, that sort of thing. It was really good, but it just didn't manage. And I was always sort of against young farmers. Like, I was at uni and I thought some of the folk that were at uni with us were young farmers, and all that mattered was young farmers and nothing else mattered. And I thought I don't know, I always had a bit of an issue with it. And here, I have eaten my words hugely in the last year. I joined last May, joined Lower Nith and Dumfries, and I've just got an absolute family here. I've learned so many things, even though I joined at 25, now 26, like, I've still taken so much out of this. So could you tell us a bit about Young Farmers? You've obviously been in it a while, given you were national chair.
Yeah.
You don't just join as national chair. Could you tell us what you got out of Young Farmers, and what others can maybe get out of it, and then also the roles involved in finding your way up to national chair?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, gosh, what did I get out of it? I mean, the confidence to speak in public is just, I mean, a lot of my friends that are not involved with young farmers at all have never had that kind of level of exposure, or being able to stand up in a room full of people and articulate something. For a lot of people, it's really scary. And I suppose at the time when I first joined, so I was 14 when I first joined Young Farmers, and I guess I just thrusted myself into all of it, and it was just something that I did, and a lot of other people my age did too, and so for me that's been one of the fundamental things I think that I've got out of it that I think is quite unique, is the fact that not only do you get the opportunity, but you're then thrust into competitions about public speaking as well, with after dinner speaking and brains trust and just a minute and all those sorts of things. But equally it's the network as well. So I know now, so I'm a little bit older than you, Wallace. So I know now that wherever I go in the country, I've got a friend in each county that I can call upon. Not just one, lots. And so it doesn't matter if I go to an agricultural show or an event, if I go into the YFC market, or now like the National Farmers Union market, or whatever it is, I'm going to know someone. But even if I don't, I've got the confidence just to sort of start that conversation. And now the people that I was involved with at a national level, a lot of those people are now taking really exciting industry roles as well. So I've got really influential friends in the right places, which is quite exciting as well. So all of a sudden it's like, whoa, there's a world of opportunity. But I think it's great for your CV as well, because not only is the kind of the network and the skills that you learn, but it's also the work that you do for your own community and the world around you. It's the charity fundraising, it's the kind of helping one another, and then with getting involved with the positions as well. You could be obviously treasurer or secretary, or taking minutes, or keeping tabs on finance, or promoting events and things. You kind of, yes, you do it all voluntary, and you do it because you're sort of part of a team, and those are sort of transferable skills. And when you're going out into the big wide world, if you're not going back to well, even if you are farming at home, some of those skills are still important. But I think if you're then going out into an interview scenario, you're a lot better off, I find, and you've got all of those sort of accolades under your belt that you should really be proud of. So for me, I kind of worked my way. It was never kind of a goal for me that I'd be national chairman, but when I moved over to Northamptonshire, so I grew up in Oxfordshire and then moved over to Northamptonshire and got involved with the young farmers here. And then I became county chairman. So as county chairman, then you're expected to go to some of the area meetings. So I then go to East Midlands area. And then I became East Midlands area chairman. And then because of that, I started then being invited to attend the national meetings. And so I first got involved. They then have like various steering groups. So I go on Agriculture and Rural Affairs steering group. And then I ended up being asked to be vice chairman for that. And I was like, yes, brilliant, love it. And then then I became the agriculture chairman at the same time I was voted in as junior vice chairman. So I did 2 years as a vice and then national chairman in 2012, 2013. So yeah, it's been great. And it's it's made such difference to my life, but to other people's as well. And I think as part of that, sort of, I'm a real campaigner for certain key issues, one of which is, you know, the importance of shopping locally, buying British and backing British farming. I mean, for me, that's kind of fundamentally what I'm all about. You know, why I call upon other people to kind of rally up or, you know, get behind industry campaigns, and where I, you know, a lot of the time sort of hang on the coattails of other industry campaigns, creating content. So, you know, I'm a member of like Ladies in Beef and Ladies in Pigs, and they have their own campaigns. And during, you know, Great British Beef Week, I'll put out lots of recipes and videos and things. But again, you know, it's kind of having that confidence and that ability to kind of get out there and do that, which I don't think if I didn't have that YFC background, I probably wouldn't. So I've got a lot to thank for that federation.
No, definitely. I mean, I was always quite sad I never got invited to Ladies in Beef. You mentioned the community thing. I thought that was so important. Like our local club, you're doing your concert. I think it's concert in England, or is it cabaret you do? Is
you've pantomime, cabaret, and then the drama as well. So it's on a 3-year rotation. Yeah.
The thing that I really liked was the one of the local halls just gave us their hall, and all they asked was if we could put our Christmas decorations up for them. And I thought it was so nice. Like, it just felt all the sort of old ones were there that night, putting the Christmas decorations up, having a bit of crack, saying that I was useless at putting up. It was just so nice. Like, absolutely loved it. So I mean, over the last few episodes, people that have mentioned young farmers, I've sort of been a strong advocate for getting involved, and that, you know, that's coming from two maybe not normal ones like yourself, not from farming. There's so many people not from farming, and then like myself joining is very much one of the elder statesmen at 26, just about as old as you can, and still the benefits you get out of it. You know, I'd probably got past all the interview techniques and whatnot, but I'm still gaining so much. So yeah, if anyone's ever looking to get involved, do so. It's very much good. And moving on to another very important organisation is RABI. Now up in Scotland, we have RSABI, which is just the same thing but for Scotland. Let's see if I can remember what it stands for. It's Benevolent Institute. Is it Royal Agricultural Benevolent Institute?
Yeah.
Just like you sort of looking at. Well, I tell you what, we'll pass it on to you more, actually. Maybe you'll sell it a little bit. No, you will sell it better than me. Could you tell us a bit about RABI and their role in the sector? And I assume that's really increased since COVID. I assume there's been a massive requirement for them.
I would just like to quickly interrupt the show for a minute to give you some extra information on our primary sponsors, A-Plan Rural. A-Plan offer bespoke cover for farms and estates the UK over, and will give you tailored insurance for anything on the farm, from your old workhorse tractor that's been around 20 years or a fancy new and exciting diversification.
Well, I mean, I finished with, so I was with RABI for 8 years, and I looked after the fundraising, marketing and communications for the charity across the East Midlands region. So although I still keep in touch with some of my colleagues, I wouldn't necessarily know if they've had a huge increase. I would imagine so, like you say. But I mean, it's fundamentally it's partly what motivates me, because although I was on the fundraising side of things, I obviously got quite a lot of exposure with the welfare team, who were the people that were going out, assessing people's needs, going onto farm, kind of looking at the kind of hardships, but also the accidents, the injuries, the disabilities, and kind of knowing what difficulties people were in sort of gave me even more motivation to work really hard to raise the money to obviously fund the work. And I think that for me, that is why, or part of the reason why I am so passionate about flying the flag for UK agriculture, because, you know, we have so many things thrown at us that we cannot control. And if you look at it, you've sort of thought of it as, you know, we're the first day on earth, and, you know, you're sort of trying to put a business model together, and you were sort of looking at agriculture and about, you know, the working with, you know, the volatility of the market and climate change and governments and bureaucracy and the weather and animal disease and all of these things. Everyone would probably think you're barking mad, but, you know, it's what we do, and we're producing food. And I think everyone leads quite a busy life now and has perhaps lost that kind of connection between what is produced in this country, and that's partly why I'm motivated to do it. But also I recognise how hard behind the scenes people are working and the troubles that they then face. And so, you know, with charities like RABI, RSABI, you know, FCN and Addington and all the sort of farming help charities, they do absolutely amazing work. And I think they are the unsung heroes, really, in terms of kind of keeping those ticking along. And it's a lot of the time through no fault of their own. You know, they've had an accident or an injury, or they've had a long-term disability, and it might just be that they get some equipment adaptations around the home after they've had a terrible injury. Could be paying for a relief worker to sort of help keep milking the cows and doing stuff while somebody's in hospital. Or it could be sort of looking at the other end, sort of when people are retired and don't have enough money to kind of get by, really, and it's sort of making sure that they get the state benefits that they're entitled to. So for me, it's sort of having that exposure from that side of things. It's kind of what goes on behind closed doors that a lot of people don't realise. And again, that's why I kind of, you know, if you cut me in, you know, in two, you sort of think, oh, you know, that's why it oozes out of me, is because I've been around people who have had those hardships, and often they're then the ones that want to do the fundraising because they want to give back. And equally, I mean, I've had some help from Farm Community Network after having my kids. I still live in chronic pain, and it's really, you know, I've had real challenges with mental health, and, you know, just being able to have somebody to talk to that understands the kind of pressures that, you know, not only general life, but life living on a farm with two young children, and, you know, trying to keep the wolf from your door is, you know, quite a lot of pressure. And, you know, in trying to manage pain and everything. So, you know, now I do try and do my bit to raise money for Farm Community Network. So I think we've all sort of got a connection one way or another.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, like, how many times have we, I feel like our industry is quite bad at falling victim to the fact that, oh, it's fine, or you've got to manage, or whatever. And it's sort of like pushing through to each generation, like, oh, the more hours you do, the better, the whatever. And it's this major issue, like, and I think it is changing. I think we're curbing that trend. And it's, you know, lone working, whether that's in a tractor, or that's out with a sheepdog on thousands of acres, or whether that's quite a large business falling on the shoulders of one or two, you know, a small family. It's just, there's so many pressures, and things like RAB, RSABI, that sort of thing, are like the sort of like Samaritans of the rural sector, FCN, like you were talking about there. So no, a very good institute to be involved in, I'd say. One thing I found about Millie that I didn't know, and I don't know if this is now or this is past or whatever, at some point you seem to be heavily involved in the Oxford Farming Conference.
Ah, yeah.
For those of you listening, do you see what I'm talking about? It's just endless. I mean, if there's any, I don't even need the rest of the podcast. We can get rid of the other 89 people we've had on and just a million. Just done them all. Yeah, I mean, the Oxford Farming Conference is something I've never actually been to in person. The first COVID one, I went online, and this one I went to some of the seminars online. But it just looks like a brilliant thing to get involved in, alongside the Oxford Veal Farming Conference, where they were probably enemies for a while. I think they sort of worked doing. It looks like a good thing. Can you tell us, for the viewers first off, that don't actually know what OFC is, what's involved there?
Yeah, so it's an annual conference based at Oxford University. So within the examination halls, and then some of the colleges as well provide the accommodation. I haven't been for the last couple of years because of having young children, but I'm just trying to think. I went for a number of years just as a delegate, as one of the kind of as a young farmer, and now I can't remember what they exactly call, whether it's emerging leaders, as it's now sort of more title, but I went as a scholar a few times, so I sponsored to go, and it's a 3-day conference, and they get world-class leaders, not only from within farming, but other people to sort of challenge us from outside of the sector as well. it's the first few days in January, so it normally sort of kicks off the year, the tone for the year. You get the politicians setting out their agenda, and then obviously sort of looking at innovation across the globe, and there's various sort of breakout sessions where various sponsors and businesses get involved in that sense. And I also took part in the Oxford Union debate, which is part of the conference. So they come away from the examination halls, which is where generally the presentations are, and we go to the Oxford Union, which is basically this sort of very historic debating hall, and kind of there's a set topic. And the year that I spoke the topic was, this house believes that UK agriculture could thrive outside the European Union. So obviously before Brexit and all of that was even kind of spoken about, and there was donned in Union Jack dress with a basket full of produce, just giving out and delivering my speech with Stuart Agnew, who was an MEP at the time. So we won, which was an incredible accolade, and I'm still sometimes dying off of that sort of story. But then after attending a few times as a scholar, I applied to become a director. So I then sat as a director, basically helping to organise the conference. So, just trying to either gain sponsorship to help fund some of the places and all the activities, and then obviously promote the attendance as well. And it has got a really good following. It is a very prestigious conference, and like you said, there is a kind of a bit of rivalry with the Oxford Real Farming Conference, and I think they're sort of trying to kind of work out a way of doing a lot more in conjunction with one another, but it's quite a challenge with the facilities within Oxford, and I think if you were to come away from the university, it kind of takes a lot of the kind of heart or what was really set up there. But people move on, people have new ideas, and I think it's all there for the taking. But for me it's been a wonderful opportunity. And actually some of the people that I was on the board with, I'm now working with in different roles and industry. It's funny how things move in circles, and some of the people that were that I met through there I still work with in different hats I wear. So it's great.
It's such a connected sector in that sense.
Yeah.
Like, find yourself going to a new thing, you're like, oh yeah, I think the thing that always shocked me about the Oxford Farming Conference the most, and it was more maybe shocked from the Oxford Uni side, was the fact they hold this, which is arguably the biggest conference in the sector in the year, that's happening every year, and then they sort of transition to a vegan diet in their canteen, and I was like, oh my god, that's mad. Like, how are they able to do this? This seems so conflicting. But yeah, I've seen some great speakers at it, even if it is just sitting watching a laptop. I think I've said every year for the last 2 years I'll have to go next year, and I've just never done it. But I think you're always skint after Christmas and New Year.
Well, you ought to apply. Yeah, I know exactly. I think you ought to apply as one of the emerging leaders, because then it's all paid for. Because I think, it isn't a cheap conference, but then it's not cheap to put on. You've got a couple of nights accommodation, and I mean, you do get fed really well. So it is a few £100s, but they are opening up more to more scholars, and obviously it's for those that are listening that operate their own business, it is a cost that you can put through your business. So it's definitely it's worth it for so many things. Just the networking alone, the different people that are there. I mean, I could just sort of hang out outside of the conference and sometimes I get more out of just the networking, let alone what people are saying. And I did a little bit of work during my time as a director in the press centre as well, which put me in really good stead, because then I made lots of contacts within the kind of farming media world. So, and I still work with those people today.
Are you part of the guild?
Yeah. So I get a lot from that too.
I feel like I should join that. So many people have told me to, and I just keep forgetting to do so. I don't know if I count though.
You can, of course you can.
I don't write anything.
I can propose you, because I think you need a proposal. I can't remember. I've been a member of the British Guild of Ag Journalists for 15 years probably. And I mean, the person that proposed me is dead now. So So there you go. But yeah, I guess that's what, but no, you'd be very welcome. It's again, it's another brilliant network, and it's one that I kept up that membership while I was on maternity, because that sort of kept my hand in. And so that for me was really good.
No, excellent. And there's one other thing, again, leading into this, let's look up things you can do in farming, and you've just ticked them all. Is you're involved in the Shorthorn Society, which you did mention. One thing I kind of wanted to mention, not really related to the question I had, but did you ever come across a guy called Donald Bigger?
Yeah, he died, didn't he?
He did, I mean, just the only reason I asked was at our university, our winter show. We have a winter show every year, and it's really good fun. Students get involved in the livestock and machinery side. It's a sort of like proficiency side in the machinery, and then a showing side. And we contacted Donald's family, and the son Jamie came along, and that is now the trophy for the livestock champion, the Donald Bigger Memorial Cup. Did you work alongside him, or?
Yeah, so Donald was my president actually, when I first joined. So I was only with the society for about a year because I fell pregnant really quickly, and I was never at home. So I was up at Stirling at the bull sales, and next minute I'd be across at like the Royal Welsh Show, and then I'd be here, there, and everywhere, and it was very exciting. I met so many lovely, interesting people, and the breed is just, I admire hugely, and the work that they're doing in terms of development, and both on the dairy and the beef side. But for me, I was a bit like, no, I just, it was a hard decision, but then I wanted to kind of start putting roots at home, and because I was never at home, I wanted to press the pause button, I guess. And then for me, it was kind of right. Want to support my husband on the farm, got the children, right? That's it. But I still keep in touch and keep an eye on what's going on. And in fact, I'm heading up to the Highland this summer. I've been invited to speak at a Women in Agriculture of Scotland breakfast. So I kind of thought I'm going there on the Thursday, where there's obviously a lot of the beef cattle showing. So I'm definitely gonna have a look down the lines and see who's there, and pop and say hello, because it's great.
I mean, as a non-beef cattle shower, you will definitely find me in the cattle lines at night.
Yes.
You'll find me in the morning. Other sort of responsibilities through the day at the Highland, but the cattle lines are certainly the normal place.
Yeah, well, there are bars in the marquees as well in the day, so
exactly, that's it. I'm not really a drinker, but the Highland show just somehow changes you.
Yeah. It's like when you go to the racing and you never see a horse, or you go to the rugby, you never actually watch the game, just in the bar. But yeah, it's just how it is, isn't it?
That's it. It's good to see folk again. So I was at the Highland show this year for 6 days. It's only on for 4. But yeah, I was there the day before and there the day after. But no, it is a good time. It's a good time. And for those listening, we've got sort of 2 podcasts on the go. I won't give any more away. That's maybe going to change in the next couple of months. It's maybe going to increase, but I'm not going to say any more. But every second Monday, we release a podcast with a group in food and farming. Now, at first, I'd said that was going to be a young farmers group, breed society, a charity, or whatever. We've done a few charities so far, and what I want to do is have a chat with the national committee of SAYFC, which is the Scottish Young Farmers Association. Have a chat with the national, and then go through every club in Scotland, and also plan on doing that in England as well. But the breed society part is going to be a big part of that. Could you tell us what breed societies are, Millie? Like, what are they there for? What was your involvement at Shorthorn Society?
Yeah, so the breed societies are obviously looking after all the different breeds of, well, obviously there's cattle, sheep, pigs, I mean, obviously from my perspective, it's very much focused on the beef cattle and the dairy cattle side of things. But it's there, so it's a registration society, so it's protecting, preserving and developing a certain breed of cattle, or dairy cattle or beef cattle. And so I was obviously facilitating the registrations of said cattle, and everyone kept saying, oh yeah, all you're doing is putting a name in a book, sort of thing, which technically is what you're doing, is you're kind of registering an animal. But there's a lot of history and prestige behind that, and also you're kind of looking from where the animals came from, and making them also fit for purpose in the current climate. And so, you know, a lot you're seeing at the moment, a lot of the native breeds having a resurgence, especially because of regenerative agriculture, because of the way that some of the government funding is, that actually you're getting rewarded for, you know, having hardier cattle grazing less favourable areas, for example. So, you know, I was obviously very much involved with that, and also, you know, working in conjunction with some of the supermarkets. So the Shorthorn Society are very involved with Morrison's, and they're quite the kind of marketing of the Shorthorn breed through their various shops is becoming a lot more prevalent. So it's kind of from that perspective. But then obviously this showing side of the cattle is a big thing, and I mean, for a lot of people, like, the pedigree breed is life, you know, and especially in the summer shows and things. And, you know, the amount of effort and energy in terms of, you know, preparing your cattle, halter training them, getting them in show condition, as it were, to then, you know, work your way up from maybe your small local village county show up to, you know, the like winning the Highland show, you know, in your beef breed category, let alone in kind of like the overall you know, championships and what have you. It's just, you know, I mean, you don't do it for the money. I mean, blimey, the amount of time and energy and effort, but it's the accolade. And then because you can then obviously build up your own reputation on breeding really good quality cows, then when you sell them at the likes of the bull sales at Stirling, they obviously make more of a premium, because people get to know that, and, you know, for their, you know, easy carving or whatever it is, it's just sort of, you know, you're just recording various information on that breed that then people can either look back and reflect on the history, or kind of look at, right, in the future I would like to do this within my business, so I want to get a meatier carcass, so therefore I need to bring in a bull that has got these traits. So the breed societies have got quite a wide remit now, and then they do a lot with kind of young handlers and getting the next generation inspired and involved as well. So again, there's various sort of handling and kind of I can't remember what they call it in Scotland, but it's cattle dressing, that's it. So that's quite good as well. So you know, it's a bit like Pony Club but in the cattle world, you know. So it's they have a fantastic strong history, and going to some of these agricultural shows, you can go walk up and down the lines in the marquees, and you've got the various breeds, and everyone's very passionate about what they do, which is great.
Yeah, I mean, as someone who's won the Arran show once before, winning the Highland must be quite something.
Absolutely.
Even winning the Arran show was a mad thing. It was really cool.
I've been to the Arran show. It's in August, isn't it?
First Wednesday. But when were you there?
So when we were on our family holiday, I remember it. I only remember it because it was very, very wet, and we were very young, and there was people sliding around everywhere trying to hang on to their cattle, and then we went into this marquee, and there was this really old chap, and he was showing his poultry, and he got these little chicks out of the cage for me and my two brothers to hold.
Right.
And I just remember my youngest brother, he would have only been 3 or 4, but he was there holding this chick so tightly, it was almost like it was squeezing it to death, and it pooed everywhere. And so I remember, it always sticks in my mind that we went there as kids.
Did the guy have a big beard by any chance?
Oh God, I mean, we're talking 30 years ago.
Someone does spring to mind. But, I'm definitely going to clip that and ask my mum and dad. It's 30 years ago. I probably wasn't there, but you said it was raining. That must have been the only time ever. It's never rained at our show.
Oh really? Oh no, it was dreadful. And people were just skiing around, trying to hold on to their animals, and they were just like skiing along almost. It was just
No, I'm definitely lying saying it's never rained at Arran show. You get quite a shock if it's a nice day. Like, it's August. Why is it not nice? But good stuff. In COVID, you somehow managed to think, you know what, I've got to get a few more things now. A lot of the things you said we'd sort of dropped. and you come up with a couple of things, one being a blog, one being a podcast. I mean, when COVID hit, that's sort of when all this stuff started for me, social media and whatnot. And it was a time, I was a chef before this, or a cook. I don't know what the difference is. I don't think I was trained, so I was probably a cook. And tried to sort of show different things you can make with local food, because globalization turned off for a week or so. And it got some really good engagement, and folk loved it. So you obviously jumped on that train as well. Tell us about your sort of no fuss meal for parents, because I think that's no fuss meals for parents. I think that's a great idea. It was a really difficult time. The kids were always there, and I think that's a great idea. How did that idea come about? Was it because you were going through the same thing?
I hope you've kicked your feet up and got comfy and enjoying another fantastic episode of the R2Kast with another really interesting guest. I would just like to quickly take another second to plug the sponsors of the show today, the Scottish Farmer, and I would strongly advise you to go out and pick one up this week and see even more of the fantastic people that are in our industry.
I mean, I'm a home cook and I enjoy cooking, and as I say, I enjoy posting pictures on social media about what we're up to on the farm. And with obviously having the pigs, I was posting pictures about them. I was posting pictures of just growing veg in the garden. And that's something that my dad used to do with me, actually, is, grow a lot of veg from a young age. And so I, naturally wanted to do that with my kids. But I often find, I watch a lot of TV cookery and I enjoy it, but not a lot of it I think I have the time to replicate or have the ingredients in my cupboard. And so, but I enjoy cooking from scratch. And a lot of my friends now, especially because my kids are at school, and so I'm mixing a lot more with non-farming people, is that they don't, there's been so much more of a reliance on processed food and microwave meals and things like that. And actually it really inspired me to kind of think, right, well, let's share some recipes, let's try and get more people cooking from scratch, because you couldn't get deliveries for love nor money, and you couldn't get to the supermarket during lockdown, or if you could, it was it was a real challenge. So it was kind of like, right, well, let's try and cook from scratch, because you couldn't go to the pub, you couldn't go to a restaurant, you couldn't really have a delivery. So it was kind of all of those things was kind of a bit of the perfect storm, really. And I think now that we've kind of been let back out into the big wide world again, it's kind of, we've got quite short memories, and so I kind of want to keep on banging that drum and keep on sharing those recipes and talking about seasonality and shining a light on other food producers as well, because they're all very, very busy, but they might not necessarily be very good at their marketing, or they're not on social media, and so if I can help do that, I will. And then from that, the sort of combination of the food blog and the podcast, just before Christmas I launched an e-cookery book, which sort of brought all the recipes together to into a digital product again, because I'm all about digital, but it was an easier route to market for me as well to get it out there. So it's available on Amazon Kindle and through my own website. And I got Princess Royal, HH Princess Royal Princess Anne, to forward the book. And so I would like to get it printed now, but it's a little bit of a challenge within my budget at the moment. I either need to get some sponsorship, or I need to find an easier route to market, because even if I get it self-published, I'm going to need to charge quite a lot of money, and I don't think people pay more than perhaps £10 for 10 or 15 quid for a cookbook. And at the moment, gosh, the printers are quoting me like 12 or 15 pounds. So that's just production costs. That's not me actually making anything. And I've always said, like with the ebook, that I give a donation to Farm Community Network. So I've got to charge quite a bit to get return on investment to be able to, donate some money to charity as well. So I've got, it's sort of put me in a little bit of a conundrum at the moment, because the first publisher I also spoke to wanted about 17 grand up front, and I was a bit like, no. So if anyone is listening that can help put me or work with me to get a cookbook actually produced that is within, you know, access and that isn't going to cost an arm and a leg, which can help sort of make my kind of project kind of through to fruition, as it were, and be able to raise a few quid for charity as well. That'd be amazing.
Could someone like Red Tractor get involved with that?
Probably could. In fact, I have. So as part of the kind of preamble and stuff, I mean, I've got Love British Food. I've written a little bit as well, but I've got a bit about food provenance, about traceability, about sustainability as well. So yeah, it's trying to get people to put their money where their mouth is, if you know what I mean. So yeah, it's definitely something. But I am talking to other industry organisations as well to sort of, again, align with them and sort of jump on their kind of tailcoats as well, just to sort of see where we get. So yeah,
quite exciting getting a foreword from Princess Anne. That's great.
Yeah. Well, again, so I've worked with RIBI, and before RIBI, I worked for another charity that Princess Anne was a patron, and she's the patron of the Shorthorn Society. And now through my PR business, well, actually, I don't do the PR for them, but I'm secretary to the English panel of the Council for Awards of the Royal Agricultural Societies, which is a massive mouthful. But she is a member of. And so over the years, I've had the fortune to be in her presence a lot. And she's also the patron of the Oxford Farming Conference. So again, I've met her through there as well. And so I've got quite a good rapport with her private secretary. And I got her, so the Princess Royal came and gave some awards at the House of Lords 2 years ago at an event I organised. And they just said to me, her team said, oh, if there's anything you ever need, or, you know, we can support you in any way, just ask, you know. And I just sort of thought, well, I'm doing this project. Is this something that she would get behind? And they said, well, tell us what you're doing and we'll get back to you. And I literally waited, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, didn't hear anything. And then all of a sudden I got this email going, oh, here's this. And it was a letter headed, and I got it in a post as well, on Buckingham Palace headed paper with her signature, basically endorsing my food blog, my podcast, and the cookery book. So wow. I'm a bit like, I've got royal endorsement. So yeah, I'm a firm believer, if you don't ask, you don't get. And it's kind of, now I need to pull more of my network to help me to get where I need to be, or where I want to be. So I need to stop being so shy, and not that I'm shy, but I suppose because I've got all these different things going on all the time, it's quite difficult sometimes to think, oh gosh, where am I going here? Because I just kind of get on with it. But I think now I kind of thought about it and I thought, well, actually, I can't keep just creating all these projects. I've got to kind of bring it all together into something. So that's kind of like the next step for me, really, is to kind of really make a go of that, and trying to bring a bit of income from it as well, because obviously I do it for the love of it, which is great, but at the end of the day, it doesn't pay the bills, and everyone's got to keep the wool from the door. So so I try and do as much as I can. But yeah, if anyone's listening that would like to get behind me and sponsor me, or sponsor that arm of my my creative outlet, that would be lovely.
Well, I just feel silly bringing onto my food and farming podcast a royal endorsed food and farming podcast. I feel like I'm doing this wrong. Am I giving folk too much advertising? That's so cool. Oh, that's so cool. I love that.
You're dining out on that for a little while, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. I've actually quite a funny story about Princess Anne and the Aaron show, so I'll give you this. You'll quite like it. 2011 was our 175th show, and Princess Anne was there for the 150th, so she came for the 175th, which was really cool. And my dad's job was to sort of show around the Texel, Suffolk and other breeds ring, and that was fine. And about 20 minutes before this was happening, my dad's own clean tup knocked him out against the fence just before he was walking Princess Anne round. And oh God, he was sort of just as everyone, but he was absolutely KO'd. Like, it was It was hilarious. Dad, if you're listening, I apologise for laughing at you, but everyone else was as well, I'm sure. But
oh, she's very, very down to earth and very, very knowledgeable. And whenever I speak to her, so she keeps Gloucester Old Spot pigs too. So that's our mutual kind of conversation or connection that we have. So yeah, for me, it's like, oh yeah, and she's always going, oh, I'm having trouble getting a hold of some, and so I have put her in touch with, well, sent the details to her team, so I never know whether or not they've actually followed up on it or anything. So I'd like to think I'm now a pig dealer for Her Royal Highness as well, you know. Imagine
the Royal Pig Cartel.
That's it. Quite. Well, there is a Princess Anne line as well in Gloucester Old Spot breeding, so yeah, so that's quite funny.
You could be the PR for it. You could get
Definitely.
There was one question I kind of meant to ask you about an hour ago.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Could you tell us about the farm?
Yeah. So as alluded to, so my husband's family are originally from Aberdeenshire, and they moved down in the 70s and settled here in Northamptonshire. And it's a mixed livestock and arable farm. So we have around 100 beef suckler cows, which we supply beef to our local, it's an abattoir, it's only 5 miles away, and they have 3 butcher shops. So very low food miles from that respect. And similarly with our breeding ewes as well, all of our lambs go through Joseph Morris Butchers, and a small amount go through Stoneleigh Market at Kenilworth as well, which is about 25-minute drive, so it's not too far. So we're beef, sheep, and then some arable crop as well. So we grow our own grass for hay and silage, and then we have mainly wheat, barley, and some beans as well, and that all goes really mainly for our own feed production for the cattle, and a small amount of the wheat gets sold as well, whoever pays the most for it. So we're quite, you know, we're quite fortunate. Well, I don't know, some people say it's fortunate, some people don't say it isn't, depending on what side of the coin you are, but our farm's actually within a village, so we're not sort of out on our own, which is quite nice, because I also have a few hens, so I sell eggs at the gate and things like that, and actually people are quite interested in what we're doing, and I write in a parish newsletter in the local newspaper and things about what we're up to. And again, I share a few recipes and things, but the kind of flip side to that is, you know, then we have a lot of footpaths, we've got the canal that runs through the farm as well, so we've had issues with like dog worrying, we have had rural crime, you know, there's 2 sides to every coin, but I think overall it's quite nice to not be out on a limb, and actually have that kind of engagement. And like in a few weeks after Easter, the village, so my eldest is at primary school, so the kids, his class, are going to come when we're lambing, so so it's nice things we do like that, sort of bit of local engagement as well, to get people sort of more interested or kind of aware of what we're doing. So I always joke I'm the farm's diversification, because I obviously like done a bit of a side hustle with my PR business, but I've always had a career, as I've explained, I've always had a career before I kind of married into farming anyway, and although, you know, I do support my husband during busy times, lambing and during harvest and what have you, it's slightly harder now with the children, but you know, I very much, I thrive on it, absolutely love it, and you know, the kids just get thrown into it too, so I've got, you know, as we say, an heir and a spare, so whether or not they want to go into farming is another thing, but it's quite nice to bring them up on the farm.
Cheap labour at the minute, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say they're particularly helpful, 5 and 4 years old, but they're getting there. It won't be long. No,
it won't be. Yeah, some are getting involved at that age. Some but absolutely some aren't. Tell us about the podcast itself, Millie. What sort of guests are you having on?
Yeah,
and say its name so folk can go listen.
So it's called the Countryside Kitchen Meets, a food and farming podcast. So I release an episode once a month, and I basically interview farmers, food producers, and lovers of food, about what they produce, a bit about their backstory as well, sort of get, you know, their route into agriculture, whether they're born into it or whether or not they shape their own career or created their own business off the back of something else. And I have had a few, I've been quite fortunate actually, I've had a few kind of minor celebrities as well. So I had BBC's Chris Bavin, who you might know from Eat Well for Less. So he was quite an interesting guy. And a couple of years ago, it was about 18 months ago, I went to an award ceremony in London, and I sat next to a girl called Charlotte Henshaw, who won gold in the Tokyo Olympics and the Paralympic rowing. So I had her on the podcast, but sort of really, bringing it down to, beef farmers, sheep farmers, arable farmers, people that have got diversifications on the farm. So, women, men, young, old, complete cross section of farming really. And just kind of, because you probably find this as well, like when you write something on social media, you could then, there's so much more you can tell, you could talk about. And so that for me is why I started the podcast, because there was a lot more of a story there, and actually to get it from the first person rather than from me regurgitating it, it's because quite, I know what questions to ask, and to make it an interesting listen, and just trying to get it concise. So gosh, it's like, it's so tricky, isn't it? Like, because people have got so much, so it's so interesting, and so I'm just trying to kind of work out where it goes. I've been doing it, I think I've done 20 episodes now. I did have a little break last summer again because it was hectic with kids on summer holidays and one thing and another, but I've sort of really, I've actually got James McSween from McSween's Haggis. He's coming on my podcast. Yeah, so again, because of my Scottish connection, and also because I was doing a burger competition where I wanted to make a haggis burger. Yep. So I kind of leaned on them. I was like, right, come on, you're going to get lots of exposure. So he sent me a case of McSween's Haggis, but I'm actually gluten intolerant, and I only found it out about 6-7 months ago. And so I said to him, oh, you do gluten free, and he's sent me a box of that now.
Excellent.
So I was really cheeky, and then he sent it to me, and I was like, I think you need to come on my podcast now. So he's going to be a future guest anyway. But it's just a bit of fun really, and but I think it's really gaining traction, and I'm getting quite a good listenership, or people following me, and it's led on to other things, which is always good.
See, I always thought haggis, because it's oatmeal, was gluten free. I thought oat wasn't gluten. I thought it was rye.
Oat. So it's any grain. So it's wheat, barley, oats, and rye. I thought it was
a different product than oats. Here you are.
Yeah,
every day.
Yeah.
So if you are listening to the podcast, I'm sure if you enjoy the R2Kast, you'll certainly enjoy Millie's podcast as well. It sounds very similar, probably conducted by someone that knows how to ask questions a bit better than me, but I try my best.
Not so.
But no, Millie, it's been a pleasure. I was genuinely trying to work out how we would fit this into a sort of rough hour. But obviously very well trained at going over things very succinctly and eloquently. So it's been a really interesting episode. So thank you very much for coming on. I don't know if you've ever listened to an episode before, but there's 2 questions that we asked every single person at the end of each podcast, and they are: one, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And secondly, if you had any tips for folk coming into farming, and maybe even a wee bit of PR here, what would they be?
So in 5 years' time, I'm going to be a household name.
Obviously, of course.
I've just been on. So it's funny. I've just been on the Windsor Leadership Programme, which is sponsored by the Farmers Club to go on, and I need to be more bold, and I need to perceive myself as one of farming's anchor women. Hang on, here we go. Come here, come and say hello.
Someone to come say hello.
Yes,
excellent.
This is. Come and say hello. Come here. All right. Oh, so this is Dougie. Say hello.
Dougie, how are you?
Hello. And then
hello.
Hang on, I've got the other one just coming. Oh, right, jump on this side. Yeah, this is Angus. There we are.
Hello. Can I just tell you, as a Scotsman, you have fantastic names. Excellent names.
Now you need to go to bed because we just finished recording this podcast, haven't we? So, so come on, Daddy's taking you up. Don't keep that. Right, you go and I'll be up in a minute. Oh dear, you banged yourself. Never mind. There we go. Right, off you go. Oh dear. Okay. Okay. Right. Off you go then, darling. Right. Back to...
Are they twins?
No.
Oh my God,
No.
they're similar.
Yeah. So there's only 15. There's 15 months apart between the two of them.
Wow.
So
Very similar.
yeah. So but the youngest is as big as the eldest because he's like rugby player. So yeah. so I do tend to dress them quite similarly as well because they're in the same size clothes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's mad. So going back to your question, so where do I see myself in 5 years' time? As one of farming's anchor women, kind of being able to communicate the importance of buying British, shopping locally, food, hoping that people value food security, because I'm so concerned about food security and empty shelves and wondering and it's getting people to eat more seasonally and scratch cook, so for me. And then the second question, remind me what the second question was. I'm just
you're fine. If you had tips for folk coming into farming, or PR and marketing, whichever you feel best suits you, what would they be?
Well, I think, from a non-farming background, the way I've carved my career, I think you just have to be bold and ask for help. I've never been afraid to kind of obviously apply for grants and get sponsorship and things like that, sort of help me on my way. I think folk are a lot more welcoming of non-farming people into agriculture, because I think there was a bit, not only my female, but I'm not from a farming background and what have you. And I kind of, I haven't had it easy. And, I'm sort of talking to you all jolly and everything, but I have had some really serious knockbacks and what have you, but you dust yourself off and you get on again. But I think there's such a variety of roles within agriculture as a whole. You're not actually driving a combine or a tractor, in the marketing roles, the science, the research, the development, when you really scratch the surface, there's actually quite a lot that you can do. And I think that's being more and more recognised, that actually, you don't have to be born into farming to be a farmer. And actually, we need more people from outside of the industry to be welcomed and celebrated. Diversity is a huge thing that needs to be more recognised and welcomed within farming as well, because I remember going to young farmers AGMs and things. There's 5,000 of us young farmers. There's probably only 2 black people, and I only know probably 3 or 4 black people now that are farming, and from different ethnic backgrounds, sexuality, whatever it is. I think we need to be more kind of open and welcome to that, because I think. And partly that is because the way that people perceive agriculture is the fact that, you have to own land and what have you, and how expensive and inaccessible land is. So, well, unless, you've inherited it, it's very difficult but there are obviously a whole wide amount of different roles that people can kind of work their way through the industry. So for me, it's kind of, just knocking on the doors and seeing what's out there and just not being afraid to kind of say, look, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, can you help me? And that's pretty much what I've done.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point that farming isn't just sitting on a combine or sitting on a tractor. Those are very important jobs in farming, absolutely. But yeah, there's so many different ways you can carve a career. Like yourself, you're proving that. I'm in education and media. Did I think I'd be there 3 years ago? Absolutely not. There's so many different ways. Just look at the guests you've had on your podcast, the guests I've had on my podcast. It's interesting what you said about sort of diversity in farming. Flavian Obiero I've had on the podcast.
Yeah, I've had Flavian as well, yeah.
Great guy, yeah. He spoke a bit about casual racism and what he thinks is in farming. And another guy who's the sort of typical straight white male, but James Herrick works for the Farmers Weekly, and he spoke about sort of like homosexual discrimination in farming. He spoke about the sort of problems there and the problems with the LGBTQIA plus not society. What's the word? That's terrible. Oh, you know what I mean? Anyway, and it's interesting, like, and it's a worry. I think if we're causing problems there and youngsters are seeing that and they're part of these communities is the word, and they're seeing it and thinking, oh, well, if this is the way they're treated in that industry, I'm not going into that. And we've got to change that. It's not about sort of just not being discriminatory, it's being anti it, you know. And so,
and calling it out as well. Yeah,
absolutely. I think we have to. Well, I don't think we have to. But no, it's been great. I hope you've enjoyed coming on the podcast.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you.
Good. No, not at all. Thank you for your time. Appreciate, obviously, with the wee ones that you've.
Yeah, no, well, they're mad. They could hear me in the other room. I think Andrew's just running a bath for them now, so I'll go and pitch in and help. But if you're ever down this way, honestly, just call in. You're always very welcome. I always say to people that I chat to, there'll always be a bacon sandwich and a cup of tea, or a sausage sandwich. So
I'm not going to complain at that, not at all. No, so thank you very much, Melly. I appreciate your time. For those of you listening, I'm sure you've enjoyed another episode of the R2Kast. Next week, we have Louise Penn, who's an agronomist. Louise Penn Agronomy, I think her name is, quite simple, on Instagram, if you want to check that out. And yeah, over the next week, because of said injury, I am going to, albeit in quite a notable chunk of pain, try and sit and get some podcasts done and try and get ahead for lambing. So I think I've got 9 scheduled up for the next week to film. So a lot of good episodes coming. And we'll see you next week. For Louise, thank you very much, Millie.
Take care. Thank you so much.
I hope you've enjoyed another excellent episode of the R2Kast. I just want to take this moment to quickly thank our primary sponsors once more, A-Plan Rural. If you follow A-Plan on social media, you'll see the work they're doing to really promote British farming and back our industry. It's been a pleasure working alongside A-Plan Rural so far, and long may it continue. The values of A-Plan Rural runs perfectly in line with the whole mantra of Rural to Kitchen, and I'm glad to have them on board. Check them out on Instagram at A-Plan Rural and on Facebook at A-Plan Rural Insurance. See you for the next podcast.